himself. Everybody, Brian Merton!
Yeah, thanks a lot. For those of you who've been to the panel before, I'd like to introduce a brand new segment to the panel, and the segment is going to be called the Collector Interview. And for our first collector fan, his name is Gabe Estrada, and he will be escorted in by another very special guest, a man in black, and I believe they're making entrance from the back. I'd thank them, but they'd probably kill me. So, one of the things I've been thinking about for the last 2 years is what I should talk about in this panel. And one of the things I'd like to talk about is I'd like to focus on authenticity and what authenticity means to these people, to you, and in your journey through your own Star Wars story. So I'd like to introduce Gabe Estrada, who is a collector, and one might say he's a super collector. And I'd like to ask him to tell you about how he came to be a Star Wars fan and what authenticity means to him. And I have to explain to him that the green button sends the program forward.
Gotcha.
There's your monitor.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah, I'm a collector, obviously, as probably most of you. And kind of my story comes from when I was a child, right? As most of us, right? We fell in love with these collectibles. We fell in love with either the original figures or just Star Wars in general. I'm an immigrant. I came to this country when I was about 8 years old, and I didn't speak English. I didn't, literally, I only spoke Spanish. And the only English that I did speak were Star Wars lines. Because I grew up, in a country where the authenticity of something meant that it was American, right? And we get bootlegs and then the authentic things. Even the Star Wars figures, right? It was in Mexico. Now I know that Lily Led is the ones to go with, but back then I would always look for the yellow bags, right? Because that was the authentic thing. And I would memorize these Star Wars lines. And so when me and my family came to the United States, we, kind of typical immigrant story, right? I didn't speak English, but my way into with friends and all that was through Star Wars. I mean, literally, that was my kind of introduction to American culture, and I've loved it ever since. And I've always had this passion for Star Wars. And in fact, as growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. I grew up in a one-bedroom apartment with essentially 6 of us. I had a bunch of siblings, my parents. But the living room was my room. And my parents were just the best parents because even though it's the living room, they would let me put up my collectibles. And obviously I didn't have too many, but my dream was always to have a real lightsaber or a real helmet or a real blaster. So my parents would let me display that. And obviously through a lot of hard work and determination, I got through the American system, and I went to school, and I ended up becoming an attorney, which allowed me to be kind of a super collector. So when speaking about authenticity and all that, to me, I really focus on licensed prop replicas, because again, I have this deep connection with Star Wars in a sense of, it's not only was it part of my childhood, but to me, it's the authentic piece, right? To me, that the fact that I can say, look, this has a certificate, this comes from lineage, from the archives, and here it is. To me, it means so much. And especially thinking back to that little 8-year-old kid, to even think about being able to walk into my collection room now as that little 8-year-old kid that didn't speak English, it's just mind-blowing to me. It's just absolutely mind-blowing. And it's interesting how Star Wars, just regardless, it connects us all, right? It connects us. And it literally connected 2 countries for me, right? Not speaking English. And I think it continues to do so. I mean, Star Wars is one of those threads that just continues to bring people. There's a lot of division in the world. There's a lot of division, politics and everything. But the one common thread is Star Wars. And again, I feel so fortunate, and this is my American dream right here, right, to me. And again, it's people like everyone here on this panel that essentially have made my dreams come true, right? My childhood dreams, I now own them, and I can go into my room and see things that I can only imagine, right? I grew up from Star Wars to Jedi. Right? Me and Tom had this conversation. We grew up on, from Star Wars to Jedi. I remember seeing that pan of all the maquettes. And then all of a sudden, Regal Robot has those maquettes, and I can have them in my collection. So again, this is my American dream, and I just wanted to show you, and share my story, what made me a Star Wars fan, and why it's so important for me to have an authentic piece.
Thank you.